Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Pereira. The BJP and Congress-led opposition locked horns on Wednesday on the first anniversary of demonetization. While the ruling party is celebrating November 8th as Anti-Black Money Day, several opposition parties have decided to observe it as Black Day. Several union ministers and BJP leaders have been highlighting the benefits of demonetization across the country today. On November 8, 2016, the Narendra Modi-led government had withdrawn 500 and 1,000 rupees currency notes from circulation in a bid to curb corruption and black money. On Tuesday, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley described demonetization as a watershed moment for the Indian economy, reacting to former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh's criticism of demonetization. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will take stock of 1 year of demonetization. Joining me on the program right now is Dr. Rajiv Kumar, Vice Chairman, Niti Aayog. Welcome and thank you for joining me on the program. You know, there are contrasting views as far as demonetization is concerned. One section has called it a complete failure. Another section has been hailing it as a watershed reform. What's your take on demonetization?
Very honestly, I don't understand why anybody would call it a complete failure, because I think it's pertinent to note that almost the entire population of this country supported the measure. Even those who were standing in the queues and braving the sun and braving all the difficulties, when asked repeatedly by camera queues, etc., last year, said that they supported the demonetization. Simply because I think a very large majority of Indians are honest, hard-working people who hate to see those who are corrupt and earning illegal incomes and black money, strutting around the society, becoming social icons and just sort of indulging in huge amount of conspicuous consumption. And I think every ordinary citizen, hates the idea and that there are people here who have amassed wealth with all sorts of unscrupulous and illegal means, and they go scot-free. So I think in that sense, those who are observing this as a black day, I'm afraid are way behind the curve as far as people's sentiments are concerned. And I'm actually very puzzled, I must confess, with my former boss, Dr. Manmohan Singh, calling it, organized loot and plunder. I don't see who looted whom in this case, and I don't see where that plunder was, and I also don't see where the demonetization has impacted the common man negatively, except in those sectors which are cash dependent, and those have been taken care of. So overall, Frank, I must confess that I have been and I remain a very strong supporter of this courageous and sort of historical move. Which has been taken to cleanse the economy of all illegality and bring us onto a different era of transparent, ethical and honest economic activity.
You know, talking about black money and corruption, the Prime Minister last year on November 8, 2016 very clearly said that this is the first of many moves to try and curb corruption and try and curb black money. What's on the agenda next so as to deal with this problem that's been plaguing the Indian economy?
Some steps have already been taken. The 1989 Benami Properties Act was amended in 2016 and has now been notified and put into action, as a result of which we know there are about 300 properties worth about 800 crores which have been seized, and the Prime Minister may well announce some other measures under this act, because we know that this is a plague which is in the country where people own all kinds of Benami and third-party properties, which therefore escape the taxman's net. So that's one. The second one, of course, is the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Act, which have been put into place, by which all those people who until now got scot-free will be now booked and will be made accountable for their mismanagement of their companies or borrowing loans which are not financially viable. Other measures would be, of course, the greater transparency in governance and greater recourse to e-governance, which is going on, so that the rent seeking, which is a euphemism for bribery and corruption, will be sharply reduced. And you must have already noticed that in the last 3 years, significant steps have been taken to completely root out the very large, high-level scams which went along in deals and government transactions, and so therefore, as a result, there hasn't been none in the last 3 years. So, the government has acted in a concerted manner to root out the black economy. I think the two other steps, by the way, GST would be one more step in that direction, because it will bring in a large number of traders and manufacturers into the tax net. And the two steps that would be left, I suppose, are one, a greater rationalization and reform of our direct tax structure, as well as that of funding of electoral campaigns and political funding, as it's called, so that even those areas are closed, because those are two areas where there is a possibility of some amount of black money being generated.
Sure. It's been 1 day to the day since the Prime Minister announced demonetization on November 8, 2016. Several sectors, of course, have been impacted as a result of demonetization. Many of those sectors have now recovered or are on the path to recovery. But then there are several other sectors, some of them who are still, railing under the impact of demonetization. What needs to be done to ease their pain?
Quite honestly, I would have to beg to disagree with you on the fact that, on the statement that some sectors are still reeling under the impact of demonetization. Demonetization, as you would recall, lasted for all of 6 weeks until the middle of December. Because after that, the economy was quite rapidly demonetized, and I think people like Lord Meghnad Desai and some other economists have repeatedly said that we should not think of demonetization as something which started on November 8, 2016 and they just continued indefinitely. It didn't. And as a result of that, you must have seen that some of those sectors which are very cash dependent, like handicrafts or like small medium enterprises, even they have now they are now beginning to come back on steam. Except there are sectors like real estate, where the black money and the cash components had become so pervasive, and they were so dependent on it, that of course the rate of growth there has slowed down. But that for me is a very important positive step, because that means that all that speculative demand which had bedeviled this sector has now been sucked out, and therefore actual users can now hope to get their houses at a more reasonable price than what they were able to do earlier, because these prices were always spiraling upwards as a result of all the speculators pumping in their illegally gotten wealth. So,
sure.
I think demonetization has greatly helped the process of formalization of the economy, and sectors which were impacted in the first 6 to 8 weeks have surely come out of it by now.
All right. Dr. Kumar, we'll have to leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us.
Thank you very much.